the early morning, as the small town was just awakening, the telephone rang briefly in the police station. A woman, whose voice sounded quiet and completely calm, told the officer her name and address and quietly added, "My daughter has died. Come." In her words, there was neither panic nor tears, as if she was simply stating a fact. The conversation lasted less than 1 minute. Then the connection was broken. Patrol officers and paramedics were immediately sent to the given address. After just a few minutes, the police officers arrived at the edge of town at a small house that lay hidden away from the main street. The gate was ajar, and the yard seemed to have been abandoned for a long time. The front door was also unlocked, and no one came to meet them. When they entered, the officers saw a narrow hallway, at the end of which a staircase led to the first floor. Upstairs, a gloomy, poorly lit corridor awaited them, where the girl's parents stood silently in front of one of the rooms. The man looked past the visitors and clutched his phone tightly. The woman received them without emotions and nodded briefly toward the door with the words, "She is there." They said nothing more. When the paramedics and police officers opened the room door, they felt a heavy, stale smell that was unmistakable. In the semi-darkness, amid a mess of newspapers and bags, lay the body of an approximately 12-year-old girl. She lay motionless on a bed without sheets, as if she had long been forgotten here. The doctors confirmed that the girl had been dead for some time and immediately began the examination. The girl's father did not react to the doctor's findings, only mumbled that everything had happened quickly. The mother remained silent and kept herself apart. No one showed emotions. No one asked questions about further measures. Soon, investigators arrived at the house to find out what had happened. The parents agreed to go downstairs and speak with the officers in the kitchen, which was cluttered with unnecessary objects. The man nervously fingered his phone, while the woman, looking at the floor, said she had called because everything was already clear. When the officers asked when exactly they had noticed that their daughter had died, the parents' answers diverged. The mother mentioned early morning, the father mentioned the night. During the conversation, the paramedics and crime scene technicians continued their examination of the room. The environment indicated that the child had spent considerable time in bed. Strange stains on the mattress, dirty traces on the floor and on the walls, switched-off household appliances, everything pointed to a long indifference toward the girl's living conditions. The parents did not explain why they had not sought help earlier. When asked about the last doctor visits, the father only shrugged his shoulders, and the mother pointed vaguely at folders in the closet. Comprehensible documents or certificates could not be found immediately. When the coroner arrived, the parents still showed no interest in what was happening. They watched silently as Anna's body was carefully carried out of the house. When the doors opened, the fresh morning air somewhat dispelled the oppressive atmosphere inside. The house gradually filled with people. Police officers and crime scene technicians secured evidence that would later form the basis of the investigation. Neighbors looked cautiously from the side without coming closer. Everything indicated that this was not a tragic accident, but the result of something more serious and possibly intentional. The officers filling out the protocols noted restrainedly that the girl had lived for a long time under difficult conditions. The parents did not try to justify themselves or explain what exactly had happened. They sat quietly at the entrance and waited for further instructions. Finally, the location was sealed, and the officers began to leave, one by one. Only uncertainty and heavy silence remained, interrupted only by the muffled conversation of the police officers. Exactly this brief call on the quiet morning was the beginning of a case that would soon shock the public. It would make people ask questions to which Anna's parents gave no answers, and limited themselves only to the calm, almost indifferent statement, "My daughter has died. Come." The tragedy became even more bitter when it turned out that Anna had been officially a child with special needs since birth. The girl needed constant care, regular doctor visits and special exercises, At the local clinic, a neurologist was responsible for her, who prescribed necessary exercises and regularly checked her condition. In the last 3 years, however, all records of medical examinations had completely disappeared. Neighbors remembered that Anna was still sometimes seen outside a few years ago. She was about 9 years old when she was seen, sometimes in a wheelchair, sometimes moving slowly with the help of a stick or cushion. The girl was always quiet and stayed near her parents. But soon these rare walks stopped completely. One neighbor told the police, "Anna has not shown herself outside for about 5 years." Another neighbor confirmed that he had previously seen the mother taking Anna to doctors, but had not noticed such trips for a long time. Strangely, the medical services received no information that the family had refused care or moved to another location. There were no requests for home visits from doctors or rehabilitation specialists. The last official visit to the clinic took place 3 years ago, when the mother complained to the doctor about a deterioration in her daughter's condition. At that time, hospitalization was recommended, which however never took place. There was also no information about Anna's education. Teachers remembered that the girl missed a lot of classes and was switched to homeschooling, but there were no reports about achievements or home visits from teachers. Teachers reported that the parents had simply stopped responding to calls and letters, and social workers could not enter the house for inspection. Neighbors noticed that the mother hardly left the house, only occasionally peeping out from behind the curtains. The father drove to temporary construction work, returned home irregularly, and brought no visible food supplies. When neighbors asked about the girl's condition, the parents reacted brusquely and avoided any contact. One neighbor tried to speak with the father but heard only, "We do not need contact." All signs indicated that Anna was isolated from the outside world. No one noticed visits from social services, medical personnel, or charitable organizations. Care equipment or rehabilitation material was also not brought into the house. Although the girl was officially entitled to regular help, records of receiving social services broke off about 2 years ago. Friends and relatives of the family remembered that contact had been broken off for a long time. The mother complained about lack of money but refused help from specialized centers. Relatives could not enter the house without prior announcement and often encountered the parents' unwillingness to communicate. Neighbors heard no signs of conflicts or violence in the house, but noticed that the family had completely shut itself off from the outside world. The investigators had to repeatedly return to the clinic, schools, and social services to collect at least some information. Why Anna ended up in such isolation, no one could explain. The parents referred to being busy and their dislike of interference from neighbors. But why did the girl remain without basic care? Why did no one notice the deterioration of her condition? The Youth Welfare Office claimed to have tried to visit the house a few years ago, but no one opened the door and letters came back with the note, "Recipient does not respond." This story became widely known only after the mother called the police about her daughter's death. Media and the public were shocked. Everyone wondered how the family could ignore the child's obvious needs and who was responsible for the lack of supervision by the services. The police explained that a detailed investigation was required, and the care service referred to attempts to make contact that had remained unsuccessful. To journalists' questions, the parents answered briefly and claimed they had done everything possible but had no money and no resources. However, no requests to charity funds were registered. This tragedy was quickly surrounded by mysteries. How could a girl with an official disability actually be locked up on the first floor? Why did the parents avoid contacts and not seek help? Why did none of the social services notice that the child had disappeared from their field of view? The police determined that the first floor of the house was rarely used. Electricity was hardly turned on there, and the windows were constantly closed. Anna's room was not cleaned, and medications as well as special care products were not purchased. Social workers tried to organize a house visit by a doctor and teacher, but always heard a refusal. "We manage on our own." The investigation concluded that the parents deliberately hid Anna from strangers. Neighbors did not see the girl going outside or receiving help. it became clear that the child lived under conditions of complete isolation without necessary care. There were many questions, and nobody gave answers to them. The police continued the investigation and tried to understand how long Anna remained without help, and why the parents called doctors only after her death. This story left a heavy feeling and forced society to think about why nobody could help the girl earlier. Anna was born with a severe illness that restricted her freedom of movement from birth. In the medical charts of the polyclinic were records from doctors who described her condition and recommendations for constant observation by a neurologist, massage, and special exercises in detail. The doctors who cared for the girl in her first years of life remember her as a quiet and shy child. However, about 3 years ago, the family's visits to the clinic suddenly stopped. Anna's parents were ordinary, middle-aged people and lived in a small private house on the edge of the small town. The father worked in the local repair brigade and carried out individual orders. Officially, he was not registered anywhere, and neighbors rarely saw him at home. The mother also had no permanent job, although she was sometimes seen among occasional workers. In the documents, there was no confirmation of her employment. Neighbors noted that the family lived quietly and withdrawn, almost without contact with the environment. When someone tried to offer them help, the parents always responded with a brief, "Everything is fine," and quickly ended the conversation. One neighbor remembered seeing social workers trying to enter the house, but leaving very soon without explaining the reasons. Relatives also could not understand what was happening. They rarely visited the family since Anna's parents preferred not to let them in. When someone came unexpectedly, the door was opened only for a brief conversation. To all questions about Anna's condition, they responded with general phrases like, "We have everything under control," or "Don't worry." Friends of the family told that the parents had previously been much more open people, but since the girl got serious health problems, they gradually distanced themselves from all acquaintances. Records in the medical files confirm that Anna was no longer brought to specialists from about her 7th year of life. The social services also reported that they had tried to help the family, but nobody answered calls and doors were not opened. Soon the support was discontinued since there was no feedback. Neighbors who were questioned by the police after the incident reported that it was impossible to enter this family's house. They saw how the mother sometimes returned with shopping, immediately disappeared behind the gate, and avoided contacts. The father was practically not noticed at home. He appeared rarely and late. During the inspection of the house, the police found no signs of regular visits by strangers. The medical professionals who arrived at the scene of the tragedy immediately understood that the girl had not been adequately cared for. None of the acquaintances or relatives could remember a case where someone had been allowed to see Anna in recent years. No documents about visits from social services were found except unsuccessful attempts. Initially, the parents still tried to follow the doctor's recommendations, but over the years they distanced themselves more and more. The mother appeared at the clinic for a time to process documents for her daughter's disability, but soon stopped coming entirely. The father, according to the doctors, never participated in medical visits. The family continued to receive disability benefits, but nobody checked how these funds were actually used. The investigation gradually reconstructed the course of events. Anna needed serious care, but nobody offered it to her. The parents did not seek contact with relatives or social workers and avoided any inspection. Neighbors confirmed that the family had completely shut themselves off from the outside world and restricted access to the girl. The archives of the services preserved no data that the parents sought a nanny or tried to get help from social workers. Everything indicated that after the diagnosis of a severe illness, the family's isolation only increased. The police officers noted in the report that the parents withdrew more and more into themselves year by year and let nobody into the house. This meant that nobody knew with certainty what the actual situation with Anna was. The main questions that the investigators had to find answers to concerned the absence of qualified childcare, the ignoring of available social support measures, and the cause of such deep isolation of the family. The mother sometimes left the house to buy groceries and the father drove to work, but both avoided detailed conversations about the daughter's condition. The circumstances seemed strange. The family was officially classified as needing help, but actually hid the true state of affairs. The investigators concluded that the parents deliberately restricted access to Anna and concealed her condition. Precisely these conclusions formed the basis for further investigations. At the first meetings with the police, Anna's parents explained her death with complications of the severe illness with which the girl was born. The mother claimed they had allegedly repeatedly tried to contact doctors, but financial difficulties had not allowed complete treatment. She said calmly that her daughter was always in her room and in recent days looked normal, without alarming signs. The father described the situation somewhat differently. He noticed fever in the girl and said he had tried to feed her and care for her as well as possible. In doing so, he claimed he could not call doctors because he had no health insurance. However, during detailed conversations, the investigators had doubts since the parents' statements constantly differed from each other. The mother insisted that Anna slept almost all the time and did not complain about her health, while the father assured that the girl complained about pain and fever. When they were asked to name at least an approximate date of the deterioration, they could not answer concretely. Both referred to unexpected expenses and the impossibility of quickly organizing medical help. The verification revealed that there were no requests to the clinic or emergency calls from this house in recent months. Doctors who worked in the area did not remember Anna's last name and confirmed no visits to her. The police even checked alternative help possibilities, but found no confirmation of requests to private or unofficial medical practitioners. Furthermore, there were also no new applications from the parents to social services for additional help or cost reimbursement. The money that was transferred to the family as a disability allowance for Anna came regularly to the account, but was not used for her treatment. It looked as if the parents avoided official medical care, although they could have received support. The discrepancies continued in the narratives about Anna's last days of life. The mother claimed not to have noticed that her daughter could be dying and repeated, "It was nothing special." The father, on the other hand, said, "I saw that she was hot, but thought it would pass by itself." The clinic registered no requests for hospitalization. There were also no emergency calls. The parents could not present a single prescription for medications and mentioned that there might have been prescriptions, but they had not kept them, since Anna's condition seemed normal to them. The verification of pharmacies revealed no purchases of specialized medications. There were also inconsistencies in the description of Anna's daily routine. The mother assured that the girl barely got up, while the father claimed she tried to move independently. Attempts to verify the parents' statements about searching for doctors in other cities also brought no results. Neither telephone calls nor correspondence with medics were found. The father said they had not trusted the local doctors and had searched for specialists in another city, but no confirmations of travels were found. These contradictions aroused serious doubts among the investigators. An additional inspection of the house showed that Anna's room was extremely neglected, without signs of care or medical observation. Even the simplest devices for maintaining her condition were missing. The parents explained the absence of emergency calls by saying that these allegedly were not accepted without payment, but the dispatchers of the emergency service refuted this information. The parents' version about the inevitability of Anna's death due to a serious illness did not withstand verification. Nothing confirmed their words about treatment attempts, and food receipts from the house showed that the girl's nutrition did not take into account her special needs. Experts pointed to signs of insufficient care and neglect. The parents could not explain why they did not notice the deterioration of their daughter's condition. Every new question led to further deviations in their narratives. The mother said she did not remember exact dates, and the father claimed to have noticed disease symptoms a week before the incident. These details made the police seriously doubt the sincerity of the parents. The absence of documents, medical records, and facts about doctor visits made further thorough investigation necessary. Medics questioned by the police said that Anna could have lived normally, despite the severe diagnosis, if timely help had been provided. Thus, The initial statements of the parents only intensified the uncertainty of the situation. The investigators had to find out how a family that officially received support and had access to medical care got into a situation where a child died without necessary care. The contradictions between words and actual facts became an important moment of the investigation and urged the police to investigate deeper causes of the tragedy. The results of the first examination became the turning point in the investigation of Anna's tragedy. When the forensic pathologist began the examination, he discovered deep pressure sores on the girl's body, which indicated that she had practically not moved for a long time. In addition, signs of severe infections were found that had arisen from prolonged lack of care. These facts contradicted what the parents told the police. According to their words, Anna's condition deteriorated literally within a few days. Experts explained that such wounds and pressure sores cannot arise quickly. They occur with prolonged inactivity and lack of minimal care for a bedridden person. The forensic pathologist noted several skin lesions, some of which were inflamed. However, the parents persistently repeated that they noticed the problem only on the eve of Anna's death. All the collected evidence clearly indicated that the girl had been immobile for several weeks or possibly longer. Additional confirmations were found by experts on the mattress on which Anna lay. On it were clearly visible traces of a long stay in one position. The mattress was soiled and deformed exactly as is the case with the absence of regular care. One of the independent specialists stated directly, "It is impossible that a child in such a condition recently sometimes got up or moved independently." These discoveries completely changed the course of the investigation. Initially, it seemed that the cause of death was the disease with which Anna was born, but now the situation looked completely different. The prosecutor ordered to verify the version that the parents had not provided the child with necessary help for a long time. According to experts' opinion, there would not have been such serious consequences if the girl had actually been regularly cared for. The forensic pathologists established that the condition of Anna's body indicated that the girl could not independently change her position. No doctor or helper confirmed visits to Anna in recent months, and no medical documents were found that confirmed treatment. At the same time, the parents continued to claim that they had done everything they could, although there was no evidence for this. No special medical devices for bedridden patients were found in the room, which also raised questions. In the protocols, the police officers noted that such injuries only arise when medical recommendations for regular turning of the patient and prevention of pressure sores are completely ignored. The conditions in the room where the girl was located also indicated the absence of even elementary hygiene. No medical utensils or means for wound care were found in the house. The inconsistencies between the parents' statements and the experts' conclusions were obvious. The mother claimed that Anna had gotten up independently the day before, and the father said he had seen how the girl drank water herself. These words did not match at all with what crime technicians and pathologists had established. Now no one considered what had happened to be simple negligence anymore. The prosecutor's office began to consider the parents' actions as a possible crime. A seemingly ordinary tragedy at first glance transformed into suspicion of criminal inactivity by the parents. The statements about sudden symptoms were refuted by medical expert opinions. Such complications could not occur within a few days. This allowed the investigators to assume that the parents had consciously avoided seeking medical help. Thus, the investigation reached a completely new level. Now the investigators had to understand how long and consciously the parents had ignored their daughter's condition. Given the new circumstances, a verification of Anna's living conditions, nutrition, and the family's financial possibilities began. The case was no longer simply considered as death due to a serious illness. It was now about the child being denied minimal care. The status of the parents changed drastically. They became defendants in a criminal case. The investigation now posed concrete and hard questions to them, demanding explanations for every circumstance. The parents continued to insist on their version, but in the case files it was already clearly stated that the combination of pressure sores, infections, and the absence of medical documents left no doubt about systematic inactivity. The investigators intensified their work. Additional experts were brought in, who confirmed that the pressure sores had arisen at least several weeks earlier. Thus, the parents' version of sudden death was finally rejected. They had to explain why they had not sought help over such a long period. This became the decisive moment when it became clear Anna's death was not simply an inevitable result of an illness, but the result of indifference and inaction by close people. All statements by the parents about the hopelessness of the situation now appeared as an attempt to shift responsibility away from themselves. Pressure sores and infections clearly testified to the complete absence of adequate care. From this moment on, the investigations took on a strict and thorough character. Police and prosecutors began to collect detailed evidence and check the family's financial situation. Nobody believed anymore in the story of a sudden tragedy. On the contrary, it was obvious that Anna had been kept under conditions unworthy of life for a long time. It was precisely this understanding that drove the investigators to a deep and detailed investigation of the true causes of the tragedy.
When the investigators gained access to Anna's medical records, it became clear that the girl had last been to the doctor about 3 years ago. The neurologist left very concrete instructions. Anna needed regular massage, physical exercises, and mandatory home visits by a nurse. The documents emphasized the necessity of monitoring weight and water balance, applying special means against pressure sores, and immediately consulting specialists if the condition deteriorated. Separately, the doctor noted, a strict rehabilitation regime and constant monitoring are required. However, the investigators found no confirmation that these recommendations were followed. The investigators checked the information at the district clinic and tried to find out whether the family had again asked for help. The answer was clear. After the last visit 3 years ago, no new records appeared, except for outdated reminders about scheduled examinations. There was also not a single home visit by a nurse, and the social services confirmed that they had not received any applications from the parents. Additionally, the police continued conversations with neighbors to understand when Anna was last seen. It turned out that the girl had not been seen by anyone for more than a year, possibly even much longer. One neighbor remembered seeing her once long ago in a wheelchair next to her mother, but such incidents had long since stopped. Another neighbor said, "We thought they could manage on their own," and added that he had never noticed the arrival of social workers. In fact, nobody saw signs that the family was taking care of the girl's rehabilitation. Further medical examinations raised even more questions. Experts discovered severe emaciation and critical dehydration in Anna. They pointed to a strongly pronounced nutrient deficiency and a severe imbalance of important elements in the organism. According to their words, such problems can easily be prevented through normal care and timely consultation with doctors. Particular attention of the investigators was drawn to the numerous pressure sores on the girl's body. These wounds were deep, with signs of bacterial infection, and obviously formed not over several days but over many weeks. Experts noted that with minimal medical care, these lesions could have been prevented or healed in early stages. The infections caused by pressure sores severely weakened Anna's organism and made her extremely vulnerable. This completely refuted the parents' version of a sudden deterioration. The investigators carefully studied the comments of the forensic medical examiner, who explained that the girl's condition clearly indicated the long-term absence of the minimally necessary therapy and care. Documents also confirmed that survival chances would have existed if the parents had allowed doctors and specialists to see Anna. The experts agreed that hospitalization or at least home visits by medical personnel
could have significantly improved the situation. The investigations revealed that despite the low income, the family could have taken advantage of free state help. The law guaranteed them access to nursing services, special beds, and rehabilitation means. However, the parents themselves rejected support about 4 years ago, explaining that they do not need interference from outside. The check of pharmacies also showed that the parents did not buy special medications or means for caring for pressure sores. Normally, in such cases, there are regular prescriptions for antiseptics and anti-inflammatory preparations, but nothing of the kind was found here. No purchases related to Anna's condition were registered in nearby pharmacies. In Anna's room, the investigators also found no signs of special nutrition or adequate fluid intake that are necessary for such illnesses. The food in the house was standard, rather intended for adults, without particular suitability for a needy child. This was also confirmed by the receipts from stores found in the house. It was important to understand why the parents did not turn to charitable organizations or state institutions that provide necessary means and equipment free of charge. No requests to such organizations were registered. Employees of foundations confirmed that the family had never asked them for help and had not even informed them about the presence of a sick child. All information collected by the investigators painted a sad picture. Anna remained for a long time without adequate medical care. Formally, she was on the list of patients needing support, but in fact nobody tried to help her. Even teachers from the school did not receive information about her condition, since the parents stopped responding to calls and messages. Thus, the investigations obtained complete clarity. Anna did not receive the necessary help for years. Neighbors had not seen her for a very long time, and the medical examination confirmed long-term neglect of the girl's health. According to the opinion of specialists, she would have had a chance for a normal life if the parents had not ignored the doctor's instructions and had sought support in time. These conclusions became the basis for an intensified qualification of the case. The investigators began to consider what happened as the result of conscious isolation of the child and complete refusal of help. The police began a detailed check of how the parents used the subsidies and why they took no measures to save their daughter. Nobody doubted anymore that Anna could have been helped if the parents had shown care and had taken advantage of the help legally due to them. The further the investigations progressed, the clearer and more tragic became the picture of neglect of Anna's needs. Despite the parents' claims that they had supposedly done everything possible, the evidence spoke a completely different language. Every new conversation with the parents lasted long and was full of tension. The mother repeated with a tired voice, "We were in a hopeless situation. We had no money and no strength." While the father avoided direct answers and only spoke about the difficult financial situation in the family. Meanwhile, forensic technicians carefully examined the room where Anna had spent the last months of her life. They examined bedding, carpets, and floors and collected samples. Laboratory tests confirmed that the room had not been cleaned for a long time. Dirt layers and organic traces had accumulated on the surfaces, which could only have developed after a long absence of cleaning. The experts unanimously explained that with proper care, such results would not have been possible. The parents confused themselves during interrogations in their statements about how often they cleaned Anna's room. The mother claimed she cleaned every day, while the father said he was not informed because he was rarely at home. The actual situation in the room spoke of something completely different. Photos taken at the crime scene showed chaos and neglect, and the things scattered everywhere made the room almost impenetrable. This did not match the parents' claims about regular care. All the while, the police were not rushing to officially charge the parents. It was important to carefully examine how long the girl had remained without proper care. The investigators found out that Anna had stopped appearing on the street about a year ago, and nurses and social workers had not been seen by anyone among the neighbors. The mother persistently claimed to have invited doctors, but allegedly no one had come. However, a check of social services and the polyclinic revealed that no requests had been received from the family. Special attention was paid to the mattress on which the girl lay. Experts discovered deep layers of dirt on it and noted that such traces only develop after a long time without movement and care. Forensic technicians confirmed, if Anna had actually received regular help, the picture would have been completely different. The police checked pharmacies and found that the parents did not buy cleaning products or hygiene items in large quantities. In parallel, the family's financial transactions were checked. The investigators found that the parents regularly received disability allowances for Anna, but this money was quickly withdrawn without traces of expenses for treatment or care. The mother justified this with large debts, but no evidence for the existence of such debts was found. The father avoided talking about money and quickly changed the subject when the conversation turned to finances. The parents claimed that the girl allegedly felt better at home and that she herself did not want to go anywhere. But social services confirmed that access to the house had been blocked for a long time. There is a record from a social worker. The mother does not open the door. After that, no attempts were made to check the child's living conditions, as the family had formally refused help. Gradually, the picture became absolutely clear. The parents did not care for the room and the child. Medical personnel confirmed no requests, and pharmacies registered no purchases of necessary preparations. Neighbors noticed no signs of external help for the family. Thus, it became clear that the parents' words completely diverged from reality.
At this stage, the investigation came close to a solution. The parents intentionally avoided external checks, lived in isolation, and took no measures to improve Anna's living conditions. The investigators began to suspect that behind this behavior stood not only financial helplessness, but also the parents' unwillingness to care for the child. New medical reports confirmed that Anna would have had every chance to avoid the tragedy if the parents had followed elementary care rules. This prompted the police to speak with the parents again, this time with hard and uncomfortable questions. During these conversations, the investigators showed the parents photos from the house, financial documents, and examination results. Gradually, all paths to justification closed. The parents could no longer plausibly explain why they did not use the free help to which they were legally entitled. The mother spoke again of her fatigue, and the father admitted that he had not fully understood the seriousness of the situation. But the investigators found more and more evidence that the parents could have asked for help, but persistently did not do so. Thus, the investigation reached the point where the police were ready to file official charges. But beforehand, they decided to finally clarify all details and collect a complete evidence base. Interviews with relatives, financial documents, expert reports, all this made it possible to create a complete picture of how Anna was gradually deprived of minimal care. The final solution was near. The cause of the tragedy lay not in poverty or external circumstances, but in the parents' conscious unwillingness to fulfill their duties. They continued to insist on their innocence, but the amount of evidence collected convincingly testified that the girl was not given timely help. The investigators were only waiting for the prosecutor's final decision to transfer the case to court. When the forensic doctors finally announced their conclusions, it became clear that Anna's death was not sudden or inevitable. The official report confirmed the girl died of septic shock caused by numerous pressure sores and general poisoning of the organism. This conclusion completely changed the perception of the entire story, as it proved that the tragedy could have been prevented. Specialists explained that the pressure sores developed gradually and led to severe infections due to the complete absence of care and hygienic conditions. Doctors emphasized that timely help, or at least minimal medical care, would have significantly increased Anna's chances of survival. However, the parents avoided contact with doctors and social services out of fear of unnecessary questions and possible consequences.
The investigation revealed that throughout this entire time, the parents never called an ambulance, did not go to the hospital, and did not even try to use the available social assistance. Neighbors and school personnel confirmed that mother and father concealed the actual situation in every way and avoided external control. The subsidies that regularly came into their bank account were not spent on Anna's medical needs. Based on all the evidence collected, the investigators came to a sobering conclusion. This is conscious inaction by the parents, who who understood the risks but took no measures to save their child. Therefore, police and prosecutors filed charges for child abuse with serious consequences. Initially, the version of negligent death was discussed, but the facts forced the investigators to also consider more serious charges. When the parents appeared before the investigators again, they were officially informed that they were under arrest. The investigators presented them with the results of reports, statements from doctors, and specialists who clearly confirmed the long absence of medical help. The father tried to justify himself with the words, "We did not know it was so serious," but his words were refuted by documents from the polyclinic that contained clear care instructions. The mother again referred to lack of money, but the prosecution reminded that the parents never turned to social services that could have provided free help. The medical expert's report became the turning point of the entire investigation. It clearly pointed to a direct connection between the parents' inaction and Anna's death. The septic shock was caused by severe infections of the pressure sores, which could only develop under conditions of long-lasting unhygienic conditions and lack of care. After the arrest, mother and father were taken to the detention facility. The prosecution officially declared that the parents' actions fall under child abuse that led to the child's death. The original version of accidental death now completely lost relevance. The investigation file spoke of a conscious character of the inaction. Thus, the official investigations confirmed that Anna's death was not an inevitable tragedy, but a direct result of negligence and conscious avoidance of help from doctors and social services by the parents. The fear of inspections and the unwillingness to let strangers into the house became the main reason why Anna did not receive the necessary care for so long. When the police intervened, it was already too late. The final expert opinion was categorical. Anna's death is the result of systematic neglect and conscious ignoring of medical recommendations. The family formally received subsidies but practically did not use them for their intended purpose. The arrest of the parents and the transfer of the case to court became the logical conclusion of a long and agonizing investigative story. The case files were passed on to journalists and public organizations to draw attention to the problem and avoid similar tragedies in the future. Social services and police emphasized the necessity of timely intervention and reminded of the existence of many programs and foundations that are ready to provide free help to families with seriously ill children. Ultimately, the parents faced court for child abuse that led to the death of the child. The case officially entered the judicial phase, with an aggravation of the article not being excluded. At the time of the conclusion of the official investigations, there were no more doubts. The tragedy happened not because of Anna's incurable disease, but because of the indifference and criminal inaction of her closest relatives. When the specialists of the Forensic Medical Service began to carefully prepare Anna's body for transport, they encountered a terrible discovery that shocked even experienced experts. At the moment, when they tried to lift the girl from the bed, it became clear that her skin had literally grown together with the cover of the mattress. The situation was so critical that it was impossible to separate the body without surgical intervention. Doctors later confirmed that tissue and skin had been severely damaged due to long lying in one position and the absence of any care. Experts explained that such a condition only occurs when a person is not moved for a long time and does not receive even minimal medical attention. The pressure sores on the girl's body had become so deep that they caused necrosis, causing the skin to grow together with the fabric of the mattress. In the documents, the forensic medical examiners directly pointed out that the cause was the long-term disregard of basic hygiene measures and medical recommendations. Precisely, this fact was cited by investigators and judges as one of the clearest evidence of neglect by the parents. Even experienced specialists were horrified by the severity of what they saw. To properly and carefully separate Anna's body from the mattress, additional medics with surgical skills had to be brought in. The report noted that this tragic episode required additional work, as the mattress fabric had become an integral part of the girl's damaged skin. This episode became a key moment in the investigations and left the deepest impression on all participants in the case. If previously someone could think that the parents had simply overlooked the moment of deterioration of the girl's condition, now all these versions were completely destroyed. The forensic medical examiners emphasized that such injuries only arise with long-term lack of care and complete ignoring of medical help. In the final report, this detail was highlighted as decisive confirmation of how severely the parents had neglected Anna's condition. The experts confirmed that with minimal attention and regular care, such a terrible development could have been avoided. The analysis of the injuries made it possible to determine how long the child had been in a motionless state. Investigators and criminalists described this case as one of the most severe in their entire working time. Thus, it became definitively clear that the girl was kept under conditions of complete uncleanliness and without any elementary care. For the investigators, this fact forever closed the question of the randomness or suddenness of what happened. Any explanations from the parents that they allegedly had no time to notice the deterioration were completely refuted by the condition of the body. After completing all procedures for securing evidence and documenting evidence, the expert team handed over the materials to the investigations with the note that such cases are extremely rare and clearly testify to long-term and conscious inaction. Precisely this terrible discovery became the last, most weighty argument against the parents, after which no one could speak anymore about them simply not having time to help their child.